Hi, I'm having to record this at nighttime in my studio, so I hope I have a lot of light that you can still see what's going on as I demonstrate how to use the Faber-Castell watercolor markers, Albrecht Durer watercolor markers. I only have 5 colors. This is the Plein set, and I decided I was going to try it because I got a really good deal on it, and I've never tried watercolor markers. I've watched a few tutorials. I probably know just enough to be dangerous here. And warning, this is artist at play. I don't really know what I'm doing. And there are some shadows on my paper, so I hope that this is all going to work out fine anyway. I'm going to keep this simple because you may want to paint along. I'm going to paint this heron. He was in my backyard out at the lagoon fishing. Heron eat fish, in case you don't know that. And the feathers are going to be a challenge because remember, I only have one color of blue. I've got like one color of green. I've got one of a lot of these. So I am probably going to need to bring in some of these Caran D Ache watercolor pencils that we demonstrated last time with the koi. We'll see. Let's see how this goes. Rather than doing a whole painting with a background and everything, I'm just going to focus on the bird and a little bit of the place where he's standing. So let's see if we can keep this simple and get it finished. I'm going to put my reference photo over to the side. I will be able to see it, but you'll just have to sort of guess what's going on. I have drawn out this heron on a piece of multimedia paper. This means that if I would wet it a lot, it would buckle. I don't have it taped down because I don't plan to wet a lot. I plan to stay in the middle with it. However, whenever you look at the Faber-Castell instructions, they do suggest some ways to use them, and they suggest using a cellulose paper. A cellulose paper is made of wood pulp instead of the cotton papers that I always use, and so I'm probably not going to have the experience that they would expect me to have when I'm doing this. The colors are not going to lift easily if I make a mistake. So we'll just go with what we have and try that. I didn't want to go out and spend money on a cellulose paper that is a lesser grade than what I typically use, and maybe I wouldn't use it anymore just for this demo. Who knows, this may not work out. If you have watercolor markers and you want to paint along with me, that's fine. Or if you just want to use watercolor pencils or something, just watercolors, that's fine. This is the booklet that comes inside. It does have a few instructions, and I'm going to put that over to the side now. I watched a few tutorials online, and they experimented with how to get softer colors that didn't mark up your page, sink into your page. And I used a clear tray here. This is actually left over from many, many years ago whenever my husband and I were married. I'm going to put that on there. That probably looks strange if you've never seen this technique, but I'm doing it for a reason, and I'm also going to add a little more of this. I don't think I put enough on there when I started out, and probably more of this gold. And we're going to see what happens. I don't know what it's going to be like. I haven't tried these on this paper, and I'm using some time, this extra time this summer, just to try new things, and this is one of those experiences. All right, since the bird, I've got the bird outline on here, and I don't know if you can see it, but it is in a graphite that is water soluble. So when I run some water over it, we should be able to see a gray area. Do you see that? I don't know if you realize it, but Great Blue Herons have this ponytail thing going on. They're pretty hip. They've got this ponytail going on in the back. And I'm just going to make this water-soluble graphite a little bit easier for you to see. We're going to start with the top of his head. Now, I don't actually have the color of the top of his head. I've only got blue. This is where at the end I may come in with some watercolor pencils and see if I can get some more going on here. Remember that this color goes where you put water. And so it's a good idea to have either a paper towel or for small areas you may want to keep a Q-tip or something like that. I think I would like to have a little bit of blue shadow coming down through here. So I'm going to add it. Now, I'm already seeing something that I can tell you about on the multimedia paper. Do you see the line that is left here? That is because it's multimedia paper and a strong pigment coming from this watercolor marker. They are strong. If I would just draw this area, it would be a very strong mark that I would not be able to get rid of. And as it is, remember this is just an experiment, as it is, this is already making marks that I won't be able to get rid of. So just a heads up, if you use multimedia board, you may run into something like that. I'm going to pat some of that out. I just wanted a hint of it, and I'm going to come back when there's not so much water on it and do something else. Okay, the feathers, those were interesting. I really needed a light color here. And as I said, I may have looked at enough tutorials to only just be dangerous about using this stuff, but I like that little effect. And one thing that I learned was if you would like to use the bullet tip or the brush tip on these, but the pigment is too dark, they say you can dip it in water or add water to it. Let's see what happens. And that some of the pigment will go away. Yeah. And that it will be a little more faded. Ah, that works. So I can come in and not overpower this area. And I can put in light blue marks. Ooh, it's getting itself back. That will not hurt your marker. As you can see already, it's starting to recover and come back. But it gave me time to get a little bit of rough texture in here. And I'm going to mess up if I keep at it. I'm going to have to, ooh, look at all that going into the sponge. So I'm going to mess up if I keep using it regular strength. I'm going to have to slow down. Okay, if you remembered from the picture, there were a lot of rough little feathers on his back. But then we're going to switch to the larger feathers. And they were a lot longer and a lot smoother. I've got this wet enough that I think I can do some examples. This is not going to be exactly like the picture, the reference picture that I used. Obviously, I'm not that good. I can't get it to look exactly the same. But, and I don't even know enough to be teaching you how to do it. But we're going to try and see if this can at least give you an idea whether you think you'd like to mess around with these and have a little bit of fun. Whenever you want to get some new materials, things you haven't used before, try to look for some sales. Like I found these on almost a ridiculous clearance. And these are very expensive markers, very good quality. Always use the best quality that you can afford. and you will have better results. Trust me on this. Live and learn. There are some things I learned that I can share with you now that can save you a lot of time and money and a lot of frustration as well. Okay, as you can see, this is getting darker the more I use it and that the water comes out. Using some little dots and dashes, I think gives you a very natural effect with the feathers. So I'm going to start trying to do that. And I don't want him to look like a peacock, so I am trying to not get into too much definition here. This feather does come out a little bit. These guys get a little bit shaggy, and some of that sticks out. All right, and his legs are dark in the water. I think this is just a natural component for him in his fishing life. His legs are long and lean, and they look like sticks. And when he is in the water, he stands very, very still. And the fish do not realize that that's a leg. And it helps him with getting his fishing in. All right, I want to go in now. I'm going to push this water up away from me a little bit. I'm going to go in now with this little ponytail and something in this area right here. It's not uniform in this area, and I'm going to get that on there. His eye is interesting, and so what we're going to do is, let me put some of this there. We're going to put in some yellow for his eye before we put the pupil in. All right, I can get a little bit darker there. Let's see what we can do with that. Now remember, I told you that I don't want to get too much color around the throat there. Actually, in the picture, I don't know if you noticed it in my reference picture, but his neck was kind of bulging. And what that means is he just swallowed a fish or turtle or some sort of meal, and it's going down his throat. It is alive, or trying to be. And that's going to be in shadow. It's probably too strong of a line, but let's just see what happens if I let it sit there like this. And maybe I can do something to get some of the line out of it so it doesn't look quite so strong. We're just kind of making him abstract. We're just having fun. So he's not going to look real. He's not going to be like some kind of realism you would see at the wildlife art show or something like that. This is just for fun. All right. I want to put some yellow where the eye is, but honestly, remember I told you, you are the boss, and you tell this painting where to go. You are the boss of the paint. If you leave a place dry, watercolor can't go there. So let's think of something else while I'm waiting on that to get dry. How about some of the green where he is standing? Let's just try this bullet point and see what you think about this tip. Oh, I want to tell you something else about the tips. You can put this back on, use the brush tip, put this on the end, and they are stackable. Also, do you see this little knob? That keeps the pen from rolling off of your table. So I'm going to go in and make sure this is very wet, because I don't want it to be really strong. Also, let's try this. While these are wet, let's see what happens if I do some dots of this in there. What do you think? Looks interesting. Got some blending going on. They do look pretty blended together. This looks a little like the sand around our lagoon out back. But this is too strong, right? So, my brush is rolling off the table here. I'm just going to do a few wisps of this down here, just to have continuity. And then I'm going to bring this lighter color in. This almost looks yellow. When you smear it into this little tray, you can see that looks yellow there. These are the kinds of marks you can get if you are using the marker straight on your page. And when I put water into it, it looks soft and natural. Depends on the look that you're looking for. If you're doing some urban sketching and you want to, or even if plein air, and you're out in a meadow or something, or if you're doing buildings or vehicles or animals, you may want the rough look of the in just straight on the paper. But if you want a painterly effect, you're going to need to go with adding the water to it. All right, I think this might be well enough now that we can put some of the stronger color on. It also carries into his eye. Let's see if I can bring a little bit down through here. One thing you need to remember when you're painting is carry the colors that you have in one section down to another section. We can put a little of this down his back into the feathers. And we've already got some down here. I'll just add a little bit more. And I want to introduce another color. This is a sepia. And it just looks a little bit more like earth. An earthy place where the animal would be hunting and living and have a community of other herons, and we've got a gator back there, so he's probably off over here in the water. We're not going to do water with this because I'm trying to keep it short. And obviously, once I've gotten this water in, it's detracting, it's taking over. It's detracting from the actual heron. So we need to make him look a little more, we need to make him stand out a little bit. Instead of using the bullet point, I think I'm going to try this. What about if we define some of these edges? And this should have come back a little bit by now. Remember we put some water on it a while ago to make it softer and more blendy? Some of that should have come back by now. The marker will recover if you try some experiments with it. it's made to be experimented with, which I admire. Artists like to try things, so we're probably abusive to some of our tools because we just want to see what they will do. All right. His beak needs a little bit of definition here. Remember, with water, you're the boss. You tell it what to do. There we go. And on this multimedia paper, I don't dare put a whole lot of water on it. I would like to show you what might happen if we put Paynes Gray in. Let's put it in as a pupil here in his eye. Let's run it through here. And I'll do more with that. I'm not finished there, okay? I know that looks kind of weird, but I'm kind of letting a little bit of that dry before I go back. So in the reference photo, there was a little bit of his belly showing, although it is feathered, there was a little bit of his belly showing on this side. So we are going to work with that. Give a little definition to this side. This is Paynes Gray, Caran D Ache watercolor pencils. So this is all watercolor. Now, I think this would actually look good if you went in and did a pen and ink sort of wash with it, defining some of the edges. But since this isn't about that, I'm going to just kind of leave this here with what's going on. Okay, let's wet this. Get a little bit more definition going on with it. And these edges, I can't even remember everywhere I put some of that Paynes Gray. But as you can see, if I go in with some water, I can add more depth. And that is the drawback of me getting this small set of only 5 colors. Yes, I got a good deal. I don't regret it or any of that, but I will probably, if I start to use these a lot, I will need to go in and get individual colors because I don't need the whole set, like all the colors. I don't do a lot of primaries and that sort of thing. I use a lot of natural colors. But when I looked at some of the other kits, they were repeating some of the colors that I've got in here, like the green, and I believe they still had the sepia and the gold. So I don't need all that. I don't need to just go buy more small kits. I need to go in and get some individuals. And that's a good thing about this brand as well. When you get an expensive brand, a high quality brand, I don't mean to make it sound like it just has to cost a lot, because mine didn't. I got a really good deal. But what I mean to say is, if you are going to get a better quality, you can oftentimes buy individual colors. And I believe, I haven't done this, but I believe the numbers that I'm seeing on these markers are supposed to coordinate with the watercolor pencils that are in this brand as well, so that you can get the watercolor pencils that are exactly these same colors that I'm using and blend that way. The way I'm using a different brand to go in here, you could get the exact match. All right, I don't know what you're thinking about this, but I am really liking it. And another tip I just want to show you, I taught it last time with the koi. If you really want some pigment, go in after something is wet and put the pigment of the pencil onto the wet paper. Boy, then you really feel like the boss. Okay, let's do this. I'm going to soften these colors because his feathers should be soft. And then I'll show you the finished product in just a few minutes. So as you can see, I have finished up with the Great Blue Heron. I took this blender brush, it's a watercolor blender brush, and blended into the feathers to make them softer. I also brought this extra pencil. Remember I told you I didn't have quite enough range of colors in the markers. I brought in this orange here for just a tad of color right there. And because I don't leave just one color in one spot, I carried it through to some of these feathers. I toned down this green grass with its complement on the red scale, which would be this, so that it didn't dominate the painting anymore. We want the heron to be the thing. And so I also spattered some of this. I made like a little soup out of it, spattered some of this onto the page to create more with this particular color. Also, I used a blender white in the same line of pencils. They're the same ones that I did the koi demo with, if you were able to see that. And I just went in and made a couple of soft spots while the paper was wet. I think they did help make it a little more natural than just using the blue to make the outline of the feathers. And remember, we never wanted this to be realistic. I never intended this painting to look like a wildlife show painting. I was only playing around with these markers to learn how to use them. So I'm satisfied with what I've got. One thing I do want to tell you about using a blender brush such as this is that if your paper is multimedia paper like this is not just watercolor, it's multimedia. It does tend to peel when it gets wet. So if you do something like brush into things to blend them, I ran into a little trouble right here. You may be able to notice this little spot where the paper started getting a little bit rough or peeled looking. So it's soft enough that it's not bothering me, but that's something to remember if you're using wet paint and trying to maybe blend out or wipe out or lift some paint. Remember, when we use these markers, we could use them directly on the paper, we could use the brush end, we could use the bullet end, or we spread some onto a tray and then used a brush to get into them and apply it to the paper. So I've had a lot of fun with this. If you would like to just play around with some new things this summer, I think that it's a wonderful time to try things out like an adventure and see if you can maybe catch some things on sale, get the best quality that you can afford, and then just play with it. Don't take yourself so seriously. It doesn't matter if you have a finished product that looks like a masterpiece. That's not likely to happen, but rarely, maybe it does. And just play. Don't worry about having a perfectionist mindset and having to finish something. You can throw things out if they're not working, start all over on another board. Just keep trying different things and having fun with it. Until then, until I see you next time, go be a light and be the silver lining in somebody's day. Bye-bye.